relationships.
And let me ask you about your Interfaith Dialogue Committee and your 3 presidents here. I mean, some Muslim or Christian people might say, you know, I don't want to participate in that. They're just going to try to convert me to Islam. Likewise, the Muslims will say, I don't want to participate in that. They might try to convert me to Christianity. What are the objectives of these types of meetings, and what is the outcome that you hope for to come from these?
The purpose of the Interfaith Council in Manchester ended up being twofold. One was to create opportunities for people to get to know each other person to person, and to experience that there is no desire for conversion. No matter how often you say it, people tend to be suspicious. So therefore, if they experience no attempt to convert, they relax. So to create opportunities for positive personal relationships, that was number one. The second was education and learning. Now that I trust this event, now that I see that you are actually a brother somewhat like myself, I want to learn more about Islam. And if you're interested, I'll share more about my faith as well. One of the offshoots of the Interfaith Council is what we call the 3 guys potluck. And we have a Muslim gentleman and a Jewish gentleman and myself, 3 guys.
Right.
And we very simply say, come and have supper together, gather around food. One of the events we had.
But let me ask you, I mean, when you come together, you have a Jewish person and a Muslim person. Are there any concerns about diet? What's going to be served at this dinner?
We anticipated that might be one, because there are many dietary concerns that people carry into an event, not simply born of religion and culture, but also just their personal health.
Right. You might have vegetarian.
Vegetarian or salt or whatever it might be. So we said, how do we address this? We said the simple thing is that everybody who brings some kind of dish, write on a card what all the ingredients are in the dish, put it with it, and let people make their own choices without anybody's choices being highlighted in any way. Whatever their reason is for choosing what they choose is their business. But we had an event back early December, a 3 guys potluck, and each of the 3 of us, me and the other 2 guys, we spoke about a holiday in our tradition that happens in December. And we spoke about it from the viewpoint not of theology, not of politics, not of the history of our religion, not of anything terribly fancy or academic or intellectual. We said the viewpoint is, what do we do in our homes? How do we practice and understand this holiday tradition in our own homes? What does it mean to us and our families? We found that just opened doors for understanding and acceptance, because most people practice their faith tradition in a simpler way that matters as much to family as it does to faith, and the 2 are interwoven. And so the entire event was very humanized. Excuse me. And people relaxed, and they laughed, and they enjoyed things because we could tell stories about our own traditions.
Right.
And so we learned, we were educated, but it was in the context of a positive personal relationship which was continually nourished and reinforced. That is the style that we've been working on.
Right. But Reverend, let me ask you, I mean, just as a citizen of Manchester, New Hampshire, how do you view Muslims here as citizens of Manchester, New Hampshire?
Muslims in Manchester are often misunderstood, often targeted, and I think sometimes, for good reason, they can be suspicious and afraid. In a post-9/11 environment, I've run into people who believe the caricature that all Muslims are terrorists, which has to be confronted, addressed, and repudiated. So I run into that attitude, there's no question. So post-9/11, there are difficulties, challenges, and hurdles in a city like Manchester. Secondly, the plan...
Let me ask you, it's been some years since 9/11. Have you found that that type of understanding has increased or decreased as we get further away from 9/11?
My sense is it is decreasing.
Okay.
And part of it is because more people in town are meeting more Muslims from a variety of different cultures. And as time goes by, they begin to calm down and think and realize there is differences between Muslims from Saudi Arabia or from Iraq or from Bosnia or from Indonesia, people start to calm down and think.
Mm-hmm.
So the power of some of the stereotypes is diminishing. And that's good, but the work is not done, because then we need to replace fear and suspicion and ignorance
Mm-hmm.
with knowledge, understanding, and respect. So that needs to continue.
Mm-hmm.
But in this town, what made it difficult again for Muslims was the building of the mosque.
Mm-hmm. Well, talk about that. I mean, we didn't really come to that.
Yeah.
When the Muslims decided to build, I guess, the first mosque in New Hampshire,
Mm-hmm.
here in Manchester,
Right.
I mean, what was the reaction of the citizens of Manchester?
So diverse and so varied. There were those who were pleased, who understood that every religious community deserves to have its own home.
Mm-hmm.
And I spoke about this in any number of places, including in this church, at the Islamic Society here in town, in a number of places, and I've written about it in the paper and in my column.
Mm-hmm.
So there were people who understood that. Excuse me, when the French came to town, they wanted their own French Catholic church. What's wrong with the Muslim population having their own mosque?
Mm-hmm.
They got that. Other people would say, oh no, this is a toehold, a foothold. They're getting into town.
Mm-hmm.
They're putting down roots. They're going to stay. We have to resist this. And part of what I've tried to bring to the discussion is the fact that that resistance based upon prejudice and fear has happened to most new religious and cultural groups moving into Manchester over the past 200 years.
Mm-hmm.
That this is a common human reaction which we have to work with. Mistrust of the stranger, mistrust of the newcomer. It's common. So even though Muslims may and should feel very affronted by that, the fact is almost every group that has come into Manchester over the past 200 years has felt that kind of prejudice.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's stronger in this environment post 9/11, but it's there. It has to be worked with. And then there was outright opposition.
Mm-hmm.
And the opposition to the mosque in Manchester often gathered around zoning issues, the question of whether or not the workers and the contractors would be permitted to work evenings and weekends. And I know that there are some people who hid their opposition behind policy matters and protocol because they did not want to come right out and say, I don't want a mosque in my neighborhood. Mm-hmm. America has a strong tradition, maybe you've heard it, of NIMBY, not in my backyard.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, maybe you don't know,
yeah.
But if a mosque comes to your neighborhood, what is their fear that when that mosque comes, what's going to come to their neighborhood?
There's going to be more Muslims come here.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be more and more of them. And you know what goes on behind closed doors?
Mm-hmm.
You can't trust it. I'll give you an analogy. When I was a boy in Rockport, Massachusetts, about an hour and a half from here, I knew, stereotype, ignorance again, we knew there were guns in the basement of the Catholic Church because they were going to take over America. Mm-hmm. That's what I was taught as an 8-year-old boy about the Roman Catholics.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't true.
Mm-hmm.
Is there some suspicion on the part of some Manchester citizens that if the Muslim community reaches a certain critical mass, they might look for more power and maybe try to take over America? Those suspicions exist, which is why I try to do the work I do of undermining the suspicion with hospitality and knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Now, how long has this, how long have you been aware of the struggle of the Muslims to build a mosque here in Manchester? I mean, how long has it gone on?
Anyone in my family and church can tell you I'm really bad at saying how long things have happened. It's been, 2 or 3 years?
Mm-hmm.
I know what happened, but I don't know when.
Right.
But it's been 2 or 3 years, and I've been pleased to be supportive in print, by contributions, by speaking at the Islamic Society in favor of the mosque, because I think it's very, very important. One of the reasons why I personally think having a mosque in Manchester is so important is that when people have their own home, when they